hold on a second. Bear with me.
There we go. Are we good to go?
Everything.
It's
One
recording.
microphone down here is on, picking it up.
Okay, Chair Delaney.
Okay. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the Tuesday, February 14th meeting of the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. We had a swearing in an oath of office for Mr. Lincoln, who had been our new CLERB member, but he will be here next month. And now I'd like roll call. Pastor Spriggs,
Yes. Eileen Delaney,
I'm here.
Marianne Pintar,
Present.
Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr., I am present. Andrew Hayes,
Here.
Dr. R. Lee Brown,
He is absent tonight.
okay. Nadia Keen Ayub,
Present.
thank you. Bonnie Kink,
Here.
thank you. Ariana Federico Mondragon,
I see
She's not
her.
here.
No, I see her.
Okay.
Present.
There she is.
Thank you. Tim Ware, okay. G.I. Wilson.
Present.
That concludes roll call.
Okay, and we do have a quorum. Thank you. Our next agenda item is public comments. This is the opportunity of members of the public to address the board on any subject matter that is within our jurisdiction, but not an item on today's agenda. Mr. Parker, can you call on the members of the public, please?
I can. First, we'll go to Karen Remus. Actually, real quick before we do that, Mrs. Agal, can you make me a host so I can bring folks over, please? I apologize to the attendees for the delay. We're having just some technical difficulties this evening. Thanks for your patience. Karen Remus, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me, Mr. Parker?
We can. Your time starts now.
Thank you very much, and good evening, CLERB members. My name is Karen Remus. I'm a resident of zip code 92131, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. On February 3rd of this year, the San Diego Union Tribune reported on the arrest of a sheriff's deputy after authorities allegedly found cocaine in his car at a San Diego County jail. This arrest comes only a month after the sheriff's department arrested a different sheriff's deputy that they suspected had taken prescription drugs from a drop box in a sheriff's station. CLERB members, I know you previously recommended to the sheriff's department that sheriff staff and contractors be searched or scanned prior to entering department-operated detention facilities, and that your recommendation was rejected by the sheriff's department. I thank you for resubmitting that recommendation last month. However, these multiple recent arrests highlight the importance of you continuing to push forward on this issue even harder. I urge you to take further action, including, but not limited to, 1, holding a press conference to bring public attention to this issue. 2, reaching out to the Board of Supervisors and asking them to get involved in bringing this policy change forward. 3, contacting state legislatures and others at the state level and asking for them to join you in this effort. The UT reporting makes clear that additional attention and action on this critically needed policy change is needed now. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address you this evening.
Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Dr. Darwin Fishman. Dr. Fishman. Dr. Fishman.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. And I'll try to step out so it's not as noisy. All right, yep. Darwin Fishman. It's okay. Racial Justice Coalition, San Diego. Thank you. And I'm not much can be said after that first statement. But I just wanted to really highlight what was just shared with us, because we've obviously been going through this month after month with you guys, with CLERB, and we appreciate all the work you've been doing. And we're also really shocked and horrified by the sheriff's response to your recommendations that it was rejected. And I think it obviously gets clear. It's not just I told you so, but it's also, hopefully you guys really appreciate this adding salt to the wounds of all the impacted families. because basically the sheriff's department's position has been, we don't have anything to do with the drugs, the contraband being brought in. It's only being brought in by the inmates, and basically they're killing themselves and we have no role in it. Obviously with the arrest, it highlights the fact that they do have a role in it. And the point is, not only have a role in it, but your common sense recommendation for having screening is a great way to resolve it. For those sheriff deputies and those staff that are not bringing in drugs and contraband, then the screening will obviously show that. For those that are, whatever small percentage it is, those people can be identified and can be stopped. And obviously that'll improve the quality of not just how the sheriff department runs the jails, but also on a basic level, it can have an impact on the in-custody deaths. And we can stop coming month after month with new families that have lost loved ones because of the horrible conditions with inside the jails and how poorly they're run. So I appreciate this. I appreciate the other measures you have that you're working on. I hope that you could take this approach now that when they reject your recommendations, that you resubmit them, that you hold their feet to the fire and you continue to push for your accountability and don't just accept things like them rejecting it and saying that it's not possible, and understand how important and significant these recommendations are, and that ultimately this is what CLERB is supposed to do and what CLERB is supposed to be about. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Yusef Miller. Mr. Miller. Mr.
Yes,
Miller.
this is Yusef Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, Saving Lives in Custody campaign. And first of all, I would like to say rest in peace to Gilbert Gill. Today is the exact day that he lost his life last year in Vista Detention Center. I want to say peace and blessings to his family and patience and perseverance. Justice for Gilbert Gill. With that being said, CLERB, please continue to push for the screening of the deputies in the jail system. Thank you for working on that and not taking no as an answer. We look forward to hearing the resubmission answer. And when that comes out, if it's not favorable to what we're asking for, we want that resubmitted again or taken up higher to expose this refusal to accept that there is a problem with drugs in the jail and that the solution to 100% contact of everyone entering the jails is rejected. I think this is the route that we need to continue to take, and thank you for keeping steadfast on that. Secondly, the request to ensure that law enforcement, the sheriff deputies are not involved in white supremacist organizations or any other extreme organizations is critical. We're finding law enforcement having racist attitudes, racist statements, racist actions against people, whether it's deputies or police department, and to think that we don't need a local policy directly stating that we will not tolerate the extremist organizations and white supremacist organizations is just ludicrous. And it shows that maybe we are not against or anti-racism when we have that stance. We need to take a firm stance and support the community of diverse backgrounds that we do not stand up for. We do not stand up for white supremacy. We stand up for racial justice, and we stand up for anti-racism in this city, and especially with law enforcement who carries a badge and a gun. We need to know that they have this rule in place locally, local language. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will go to Lori Saldana.
Good evening, and I was reviewing the outcome of the audit that was first recommended 2 years ago now in January 2021, and it took quite some time to get that to fruition, but it did in fact have quite an impact, at least initially, on the department, but it clearly did not go far enough. We have a new sheriff. We have a sheriff who's declining to protect transgender people, to put them in appropriate detention facilities that will maintain their safety. And so I'm going to go another step tonight and recommend that CLERB look at contacting the special litigation section of the Department of Justice and determine if they are the more appropriate agency to come in and take a look at what is happening in San Diego jails. Because it seems quite clear that there are abuses of people based on their gender and sexual orientation, and if not abuse, then certainly they are ignoring requests for protection of people in those cases. We seem to have discrepancies on race, ethnicity, national origin, as far as the numbers of people who are being shot in the community and then denied access to care and treatment, and again, safety and security once they are put into detention facilities. So the state audit certainly provided us with enough evidence and information to forward on to the Department of Justice. And I've just started this conversation with some people, but I served in the legislature with Alex Padilla. I would like to approach his office and see if he would be the one who could help us move this forward, because clearly the jails in San Diego are still the deadliest in the nation. And the new sheriff is clearly not moved by our request for her to make changes to her policies and procedures. So I will be investigating that and trying to reach out to Alex Padilla's office. And I think it's time that we have someone who can really compel this office to make changes, take a look at what's happening here. Thank you.
Thank you. I have requests to speak from Amber St. James, J. Leslie Crawford. If you want to speak for the call to the public right now and not reference a specific item, please raise your hand right now. I don't know what item you wanted to speak on, if any. So at this point, I also have a request to speak from Crystal Irving, but that will not be until later. At this point, we will go to Amber St. James.
Hello.
Amber St. James.
All right. Hello. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Hello. Amber St. James, also Shane James, as a representative of San Diego Pride, the Education Advocacy Coordinator. I'm here to read our public statement in terms of what Assemblymember just actually spoke on. So San Diego Pride is deeply concerned and disappointed by the recent decision to reject CLERB's recommendation to revise the policy on the placement of transgender arrestees. We understand that the current policy, which only states that an arrestee should be taken to a facility that coincides with their gender identity, does not provide adequate protection for transgender individuals, particularly transgender women, against being placed in inappropriate facilities. We recognize the importance of using strong language in policies that directly impact the safety and dignity of marginalized communities. The use of shall instead of should would send a clear message that the misgendering of arrestees and incarcerated individuals is not acceptable and will not be tolerated, regardless of the original arresting agency. Moreover, it is important to note that under state law in California, it is mandatory to house transgender inmates in accordance with their gender identity. This requirement is based on the principle of protecting the safety and well-being of all individuals in the correctional system, regardless of their gender identity. San Diego Pride urges the Sheriff's Department to reconsider its stance on this issue and to take the necessary steps to ensure that all individuals, including those who identify as transgender, are treated with dignity and respect while in their care.
Thank you. Next, we will go to J. Leslie Crawford, I believe. Ms. Crawford?
Yes, sir. I have a written response because I thought it'd be clearer, but
Oh,
I really want to reiterate. I was reading about Takar Smith in LA, and he was a schizophrenic, and he's dead. And my son, I had struggled to get him a good diagnosis before he landed in jail. But then he was in the 1A ward, and I want to reiterate that the San Diego Sheriff's Department figure out how to take care of people, homeless people. We all have a mental health problem. And my son was in a ward. I thought he was safe. He wasn't safe. I just want to point out that most of our problems have to do with mental health in some degree. And we need more professionals in their department. who can recognize that and take care of people. I guess that's all I have to say, because I did a written response. I wasn't thinking you would call on me.
Well, that's my fault for doing so. I just noticed that it is in fact written. So what I'll do to make sure that your thoughts are accurately reflected, if you would allow me, I'm going to read your written response in now, if that's okay with you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
I apologize for putting you on the spot. All right, so what I'd like to do is what I should have done in the first place, which would be to read the statement from Ms. Crawford. Bear with me for a minute. These technical difficulties have made it a little difficult for me to be more organized. I apologize. Thanks for your understanding. All right, I have it, and this again is from J. Leslie Crawford. I'm supporting the North County Equity and Justice Yusuf Mill. My son, Raymond Vogelman, was attacked and died from his injuries on October 5th, 2022. I know I will never know his attackers, nor will they ever be punished for their crime. I believe he was safer in the 1A unit at GBF of the San Diego Central Jail, of the San Diego County jails, but I was naive. He suffered from misdiagnosed mental health. I will assume the populace of his unit also had mental health problems. I am angry that the Sheriff's Department didn't think they needed to at least keep active video surveillance over these individuals. The Sheriff's Department continues to deny release of his autopsy report, I assume for legal and political reasons. I need something to help with closure besides the photos I took of my son's body. I know the pain will never go away, but the mind still wants answers. At this point, I have 4 requests to be read into the record, but that will be, I believe, for an item later on in the agenda. So at this time, Chair Delaney, I have no additional requests to speak.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to the approval of the minutes for January 10. Do we have any revisions? And if not, do we have a motion to approve? Okay, G.I. Wilson, motion. Do we have a second? Mary Ann Pintar. Okay, any other discussion? Pastor Spriggs, could you take the roll call for the vote, please?
Yes. Let me pull up the list on my phone. I'm sorry. Eileen Delaney,
Yes.
Mary Ann Pintar,
Yes.
Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr., yes. Andrew Hayes,
Yes.
Dr. Arlie Brown, he's not in, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Nadia Keene Ayub,
Yes.
Bonnie Kink,
Yes.
Ariana Frederico Mondragon,
Yes.
G.I. Wilson.
Yes.
Tim Ware is not here tonight, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Motion carries. And the next is for our special meeting of January 31st. Any revisions? If not, do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move approval.
Okay, that's Mary Ann Pintar. Do we have a second? G.I. Wilson. Okay, any other discussion? Pastor Spriggs?
Eileen Delaney,
Yes.
Mary Ann Pintar,
Yes.
Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr., yes. Andrew Hayes,
Yes.
Nadia Keene Ayub,
Yes.
thank you. Bonnie Kink,
Yes.
Ariana Frederico Mondragon,
Yes.
and G.I. Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carries. All right, number 6 is our executive officers report. Mr. Parker?
Thank you, Chair Delaney. Staff have been working to ensure virtual capacity is flawless when we go back in person meetings on March 21st. So that's been a major priority, and we had no issues on January 31st, and we're going to remedy the issues we have tonight so that we can do the virtual in addition to the in-person meetings on March 21st. Staff have also been working diligently on the 2022 annual report, and that's scheduled to be presented to CLERB on March 21st and the Board of Supervisors the following week. I've chaired a NACOL subcommittee pertaining to outcome versus outputs for civilian oversight stakeholders and participated in the outcome versus outputs for civilian oversight investigators. This is nationwide. This is forming some of the opinions in addition to public comment and additional reports that have been done on civilian oversight and what may be appropriate for civilian oversight in San Diego County. And we'll talk about that, the rules and regulations part. The investigative workload, 11 new cases were reported in January. We're still up in the high 90s for the total number of open cases at the end of each month. At this point, there are 30 open death cases. We have materials for 10. We're still waiting for materials from the respective departments for the other 20. There were 0 death cases reported in January. There are 8 open uses of force resulting in great bodily injury cases, and one of them is on tonight's agenda. And we have all the materials we need for the other 7. There are 5 open discharges of firearms without a signed complaint, and one of them is on tonight's agenda, and we have materials for 1 other. We're still waiting for materials or we need materials for the other 3. And at this point, there are no open uses of force at protests or First Amendment protected events. In reference to the case progress and status reports, which is attachment C, you'll note that we have, again, continued to be much more timely in the completion of our reports, and there's that's been a focus. And so, as you can see, we're trying to get that down within 6 months. Death cases, obviously 3 months from the time that we receive all the materials, and that, of course, is based on some of the state audit recommendations as well. So, in reference to the executive officer correspondence to the full CLERB, which is attachment D, I sent 9 emails containing 25 total media articles and releases. And that was the extent of my correspondence to the full CLERB. The policy recommendations pending response. At this point, the Sheriff's Department has 17. And as you can see on the agenda, I've elected to list them to be more clear by date that they were forwarded to the department, and then broke them down by department. So you'll see that the majority of those responses are really from the last couple of months. There's not any kind of delay. I think the oldest one was from September, but many of the others are from October on, and at least 4 were occurred at the last meeting 2 weeks ago. So we're at 17 for the Sheriff's Department, with 1 response that we'll talk about, and then 4 for the Probation Department and 1 response that we'll talk about. So as far as policy recommendation responses, we received 1 from the Sheriff's Department, and that is going to be attachment E. Attachment E is in reference to the Christina Frost case, 21055. And this recommendation, CLERB recommended to the Sheriff's Department that an arrestee shall be taken to a facility that coincides with the arrestee's gender identity. Shall, if the arrestee identifies as a female, shall be taken to Las Colinas or Vista Detention. An arrestee who identifies as male shall be taken to San Diego Central Jail or Vista Detention Facility. And if the arrestee is identified as non-binary, the arresting officer shall inquire as to whether the arrestee would prefer to be booked into a male or female facility and transported accordingly. Sheriff's Department's response was that out of the almost 50,000 folks who were booked into custody in 2021, 25% of those were booked in by the Sheriff's Department. So basically 75% of the folks that are booked in, the Sheriff's Department contends that this recommendation would not apply to those folks because they're outside agencies. In addition, what we referenced in the policy recommendation was the policy and procedure section, Detention Services Policy and Procedure section R13, where it says should be taken. And that's what we were asking to change. But at this point, the department says that based on the language that was previously incorporated into R13 on March 20th of 2022, which obviously predated our recommendation, they believe that the desired outcome, properly booking and housing all transgender arrestees, has already been met with the should caveat that this recommendation has to change to shall. So based on those 2 responses, the Sheriff's Department has decided it will not implement the recommended change. So that's attachment E for Ms. Frost. And in reference to the Probation Department policy recommendation response, if you recall, we made a recommendation that there be a proactive review of employee social media. We made that recommendation for both the Sheriff's Department and the Probation Department. The Probation Department's response was that that recommendation at this time, based on current resources and budgeting issues, fiscal outlook and staffing resources issues, that presents challenges that, quote, we are not able to meet. However, should our staffing resources and fiscal outlook improve in the future, we will reassess adopting this recommendation. So that is the response for attachment F. And at this point, we have 2 sustained findings pending response and no sustained findings responses as of right now. That concludes the executive officer report. However, I would like to, Chair Delaney, there are 4 requests to be read into the record on the policy recommendation response to 21055 attachment E. I see no other requests to speak at this time. With your permission, may I read the responses into the record?
Yes.
From Terry Verano. PFLAG San Diego County does not support the clause that an arrestee should be taken to a facility that coincides with their gender identity. It is a suggestion as written and does not provide adequate protection for transgender individuals, particularly transgender women. As parents and allies of transgender individuals, we know that words matter. Their safety while in custody is imperative, and stating that they shall or will be taken to a facility that coincides with their gender identity is the least you can do. PFLAG San Diego County urges you to change your stance on this wording so that our loved ones and community members are safe from being housed in dangerous circumstances. That's number 1. Number 2, from Jen LaBarbera. San Diego Pride is deeply concerned and disappointed by the recent decision to reject CLERB's recommendation to revise the policy on the placement of transgender arrestees. We understand that the current policy, which only states that an arrestee, quote, should be taken to a facility that coincides with their gender identity, end quote, does not provide adequate protection for transgender individuals, particularly transgender women, against being placed in inappropriate facilities. We recognize the importance of using strong language and policies that directly impact the safety and dignity of marginalized communities. The use of shall instead of should would send a clear message that the misgendering of arrestees and incarcerated individuals is not acceptable and will not be tolerated regardless of the original arresting agency. Moreover, it is important to note that under state law in California, it is mandatory to house transgender inmates in accordance with their gender identity. This requirement is based on the principle of protecting the safety and well-being of all individuals in the correctional system, regardless of their gender identity. San Diego Pride urges the Sheriff's Department to reconsider its stance on this issue and to take the necessary steps to ensure that all individuals, including those who identify as transgender, are treated with the dignity and respect while in their care. Next, from Bo Broughton. I am deeply concerned and disappointed by the recent decision to reject CLERB's recommendation to revise the policy on the placement of transgender arrestees. I understand that the current policy, which only states that an arrestee should be taken to a facility that coincides with their gender identity, does not provide adequate protection for transgender individuals, particularly transgender women, against being placed in inappropriate facilities. We recognize the importance of using strong language and policies that directly impact the safety and dignity of marginalized communities. Use of shall instead of should would send a clear message that the misgendering of arrestees and incarcerated individuals is not acceptable and will not be tolerated, regardless of the original arresting agency. Moreover, it is important to note that under state law in California, it is mandatory to house transgender inmates in accordance with their gender identity. This requirement is based on the principle of protecting the safety and well-being of all individuals in the correctional system, regardless of their gender identity. San Diego Pride urges the Sheriff's Department to reconsider its stance on this issue and to take the necessary steps to ensure that all individuals, including those who identify as transgender, are treated with dignity and respect while in their care. And I believe I have one more request to speak, or not request to speak, a comment to be read into the record, and I do. And that comes from Chloe Jonda. Sheriff Kelly Martinez had previously committed to supporting transgender folks, and this response does not align with that prior commitment. This decision is a matter of life and death. The use of shall instead of should would send a clear message and ideally prevent the misgendering of arrestees and incarcerated individuals. This decision needs to be reconsidered for the good of all people. And at this point, Chair Delaney, I have one request to speak from the public. May I do that?
Of course.
Yusuf Miller.
Hello, Yusef Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition, and I stand with my transgender brothers and sisters and the LGBTQ community in this outrage. This is a matter of life and death. This decision from the Sheriff's Department is a deadly one. The dignity and respect that our transgender brothers and sisters need to have when they are booked into jail not only upholds their dignity and respect, but it can ensure that their life continues. We've saw almost a loss of life, a person nearly beat to death. We have this in the record. It is public knowledge. We need to be more sensitive. We need to be more compassionate and making sure that this does not happen ever again, not even coming close. Please reconsider this decision and follow the CLERB's recommendation. Thank you.
And thank you. Next, we will go to Mary Best. Mary Best, are you there?
Yes, I just got the unmute sign. I just want to echo what Mr. Miller just said about compassion, because I remember that Sheriff Kelly said, we really have a commitment to compassion. And I think this is really kind of where you put that to the test and say, you know, this is compassionate, and it's not only legally, you know, mandatory that you adhere to this, but that if you're talking about being compassionate and also protecting the public safety of those who are in your care, then I think that's where we need to revisit that and understand what Kelly Martinez, what Sheriff Martinez really understands the meaning of compassion really to be, because this issue of respect and compassion for someone's gender identity is really important. Thank you so much.
Thank you. At this point, Chair Delaney, I do not see any additional requests to speak. Let me check one more place here to make sure we didn't get any, and no, we did not. And so with that, Chair Delaney, I turn this back over.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. CLERB members, do we have comments? Ms. Kinayu?
I want to thank the people that came here to speak on this, and I want to reiterate the importance of shall versus should. I find it hard to grasp why the Sheriff's Department is pushing back on this, simply because it is a matter of verbiage. And that verbiage would protect not only the inmates, but the officers and their decisions. My concern is that the Frost case, the officers should have placed Ms. Frost in the correct facility. They should have checked on her. But because they were left to make that decision without a direct note, a direct item that states that they specifically need to follow the policies, they made a decision that caused permanent harm and issue for that person. So when we talk about the difference between shall and should, we should discuss that what should have been done should have been a policy that stated exactly what would have avoided this situation.
Thank you. Any other comments from CLERB members? Ms. Pintar?
I have a question as it relates to this discussion of the various law enforcement agencies and how they make a decision about taking people to the booking facilities, because we know that not all of them have booking, correct? It's Vista and it's San Diego Central and Las Colinas. Is that right, Paul?
That is what my understanding is.
So, but in the Frost case, she wasn't at a permanent housing facility yet, was she? She was at a booking facility at San Diego Central, is my recollection.
I don't believe that we can discuss it because it's specific to the case.
Okay,
So
is that right?
that's
Okay.
kind of the issue.
Okay, let me make a hypothetical. if someone is arrested by San Diego Police Department and brought to San Diego Central Jail, and they self-identify as a woman, and there are detention cells. It's not a matter of whether she's going to be booked into that. Say, am I still breaking the rule? I'm still using a hypothetical, I believe.
No, you're fine. It was
Okay.
feedback from the room itself. If the
Okay,
folks in the room.
I wanted to make sure I was not interrupting Ms.
No,
Hoffman.
you're good. Go ahead.
Okay. In a particular case where that person self-identifies as a female.
Something works.
and,
Wait, I can
uh,
it works. It works.
I don't think you realize they're not muted.
I'm sorry. So it seems like the problem was the holding cell, not so much the housing facility. I would like to know how we can get to the point, how do we get to what really we were trying to tackle with this particular recommendation, that somebody isn't put into a holding cell with someone that poses a threat, whether it's a transgender person or anyone. Maybe one of the sheriff's representatives explain how those decisions are made, because regardless of whether it's a transgender person or anyone else that could be threatened when they're booked, why aren't they put into a holding cell that keeps them safe? That's all we're asking for. I mean, it's beyond a policy, beyond the transgender policy. It's where are people held while they're being booked so they are safe from harm?
I will have to obviously turn that over to Sergeant Tingley to see if, just defer to the department. So Sergeant Tingley.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so to answer your question, as they come into our facilities, they are screened. And once they're screened, they are put into a holding cell that would be safe for their screening questions. So we do put them in safe holding cells until we're able to move them to a housing cell, which would be on a different floor.
If San Diego Police Department brings somebody in, it is still up to Sheriff's Department staff to place them in a safe holding cell, correct? I guess I'm really not understanding why the fact that only 25% of the arrestees are, the fact that there's only 25% of the arrestees are brought in by the Sheriff's Department, why that makes a difference as to whether or not someone should be put in a safe cell.
I don't believe that's what we're trying to say there. I believe what we're trying to say is that those numbers, 25% are Sheriff's Department related arrests. That doesn't mean that only 25% are going to be put in a safe cell. What we're saying is that rewriting the policy to what CLERB's recommendations aren't going to change 75%. We're still doing what we need to do to keep everybody safe. They're going into a safe location. They're getting screened as anybody else would coming into our facilities, and they're putting in a safe location. And then if they need to go to a different location, then we can then move them to that location.
I see Lieutenant Greenwald's hand up. Hi, Lieutenant, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. And Sergeant Tingley just touched on what I was going to touch on. The policy recommendation that we received was to amend our patrol procedures manual, which was renamed the Field Operations Manual in 2019. The section in the manual that was recommended for a change actually has nothing to do with booking people based on their gender identity or their gender presentation to other members of the public. So the detentions policy section that was referenced in your policy recommendation was updated in March of 2022, and it specifically outlines how, when, and where people will be accepted for booking, regardless of which agency books them in. So the 25% question is, the recommendation that we received from CLERB would only pertain to sheriff's arrestees, meaning that 75% of the people who were arrested and booked into our jails wouldn't have fallen under that purview. Our detentions PNP actually mandates that people do their best to book somebody into the jail that most closely aligns with their gender identity or their gender presentation. Once they get into the booking process and the screening process, as soon as a nurse or a deputy becomes aware that, hey, this person might not be cisgender, they go off into a different pipeline. They're placed into a secure holding cell away from other arrestees until a jail population management unit deputy can come over and interview them. This process was outlined 3 or 4 months ago in a CLERB meeting, specifically by the jail population management unit lieutenant. So I would like to call your attention back to that. We've already walked through this process a couple times. The ultimate intent is to make sure that folks are safely housed and booked based on their gender identity. At the time of the original case, and cut me off if I'm breaking any rules here, the policy at the time was followed by the deputies who arrested and then booked Ms. Frost. That's the simple reality. I don't know how else to express it other than we already have put safeguards in place to make sure that these folks wind up in an appropriately safe place.
So Lieutenant, if I understand correctly, when, let's say, San Diego PD brings someone in, they put them in a holding cell, and then from that point, your staff, Sheriff's Department staff, takes over after they've been put in that holding cell? Am I understanding that correctly?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
San Diego PD would bring an arrestee in, and
Right.
if that person very obviously presents as female,
right,
at San Diego Central Jail, we would immediately start asking questions.
Okay.
Conversely, San Diego, and I will go back to the tour that Ms. Pintar was on at San Diego Central Jail when we were in the booking area. San Diego PD brought a person into the booking facility who initially presented as male, short hair, baggy blue jeans, loose fitting t-shirt, all that kind of stuff. That person ultimately wound up being biologically female. And the determination was made at the time, and I don't know what their gender identity is or anything like that. That was just their physical appearance. The determination was made at that time to take that person over to Las Colinas and begin the booking process at Las Colinas, because just based on his or her physical appearance, there was potential for there to be a problem going through the booking process with other incarcerated persons. So the system is working. I can tell you, I worked overtime at our San Diego Central Jail on Friday night, and we had an instance where an intersex person was booked into the facility. They went through the initial booking process with our jail population management unit, and the determination was ultimately made on our side. Based on this person's statements, we need to move you over to the Las Colinas detention facility. So that the system does work.
Thank you. Ms. Kina, is your hand up from before, or did you want to ask something else?
I wanted clarification, please.
Okay, sure.
So my question, Lieutenant, then is, if it's only 25%, then why would the sheriffs not adopt the verbiage, even if it's just for yours, to clarify for your officers specifically what the process should be? 2, if it works 80% of the time, there's still a 20% fail rate. If it works 90% of the time, there's still a possibility for a 10% fail rate. And that fail rate constitutes a human being. So in order to properly, for both the officers and the public to understand what the process would be should they be booked, it should be shall instead of should, to alleviate the idea that an officer should make that decision based off their own understanding of that person's gender identity.
You're referencing statistics that I don't know what the foundation for those are. 80 or 90%, I don't know where you're pulling those numbers from. The simple reality is the section in our field operations manual that was referenced for change has to do with the physical process of booking an arrestee into custody. Keep them handcuffed behind their back in the back of the car. Secure your firearm before you remove the person from the back of your car in the booking area. Maintain physical custody of your arrestee in the booking area. The only reference to gender in the entire section has to do with obviously pregnant arrestees and how they should be processed through the booking process if they need a medical screening before they actually need to come into the booking area. So, and by medical screening, I mean, do they need to go to a hospital before speaking with a nurse in the jail? So ultimately, the intent of the policy recommendation was met March of last year when we amended detention P&P section R13.
Ms. Pintar?
I don't have any other questions.
Okay. Okay, with that, we will go to, thank you, Lieutenant. We'll go to the board chair's report. So CLERB members, this is a good segue. Now that the pandemic is winding down, I would ask you to do your detention center tours and ride-alongs. You can check with Mr. Parker and Sergeant Tingley. This will get you a good perspective. It's been a number of years for me, and I'd like to do them again myself. I think the more we educate ourselves, the better we are prepared to understand our cases. I'd like to thank the public again for attending, sheriff and detention liaisons, and CLERB staff and board members. I'd also like to the probation department, thank you for attending as well. And with that, we will go to new business. And this is the first one is continuance of teleconferencing meeting option pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E. Council, could you read the motion, please?
Sure.
Whoa.
The appropriate motion would be to find that the CLERB has reconsidered the circumstances of the state of emergency and that state and local officials continue to recommend measures to promote social distancing.
Thank you. I guess this would just be appropriate if we were having a meeting in the next couple of weeks. I don't see that we would be having a meeting, but is there a motion just in case? All right, so if there's no motion, then we will be going back full time to in-person meetings for CLERB board and virtual for members of the public. Next one is adoption of the new CLERB logo.
Chair Delaney.
Yes.
Sorry. Just to clarify, the meetings will be back in person next month under state law.
Right.
The finding tonight would allow, if there was a need for a special meeting or anything like that within the next 2 weeks, essentially, to be able to do that virtually. So I just want to make sure that's clear to the board members.
Right. Was I pretty clear on that? Did everyone understand that? Do we have to make a motion? Do we have to vote on it, Sherry? Ms. Hoffman?
No, it's not required, but
okay,
if there is a need for a meeting, it would have to be in person after this.
So if we have a meeting, if there is a need
quorum.
in the next couple weeks, it would be in person. Is that understood? Okay. Ms. Hoffman, I have a question for you going back to what we were just discussing about the specifics of a case. Are we allowed to ask about a specifics of a case that's already been, that we've already made a determination on?
No, that wouldn't be appropriate in this venue.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Adoption of new CLERB logo. Mr. Parker?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Basically, what I wanted to do was, but I don't know if there's still technical difficulties in the meeting where staff currently are. I was going to turn this over to Norris Hakak, our administrative analyst. So what I want to do is basically explain to you the reasons for this. When I came back about 2 years ago, I mean, there was much work to do. One of the things that I put on the back burner was what exactly, what are we representing, right? When you look at CLERB's logo, current logo, there's a badge on the logo. To me, I don't find that appropriate because we're not law enforcement. And I don't think that there should be a badge on our logo. And it pivoted into a bigger thought about our branding, about really what are we, what's the bigger picture as evidenced by our rules and regulations, revisions that we're going to do, that we're going to present again tonight. You'll see that that's something that I've been looking at as your executive officer. So when Norris was hired as the administrative analyst in August, one of the first things she said to me upon meeting was about our branding and about the logo and about how that badge is off-putting and makes people in the community very fearful of even approaching us to talk to us because they think that we are in fact law enforcement. So I asked Norris to move forward to do what she could do. And it's been a couple of months worth of work. It's been a lot of work that she's done. And so with that, I'd like to turn over to her everything that's going on. And then again, if she can hear me and address the CLERB. Norris, are you there?
Thank you, Paul. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Can everybody see me?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul, for the introduction, and good evening, everyone. I want to share with you today the project that we handled here in CLERB to create the new logo. And actually, I want to start with the purpose of this project. Actually, we want to create a new logo because this will reflect what CLERB is and will bring the awareness of what we do. And actually, this is the first step that we need to do moving forward with our community outreach plan. We started this project mid-September in 2022. So today it's like 5 months worth of work. The first step we did once we decided to move forward with this project is talking with the county communication office with the County of San Diego to make sure that we are consistent with the county policies and protocols when it comes to create a new image and rebranding. So we shared with them what CLERB is and is not. After that, we started working on selecting symbols that resonate with CLERB. We came up with 3 key symbols. First is the scale and Lady Justice that symbolizes the justice system, community representation, by adding graphic of people to the background of our logo, which was missing with the previous one. And also we selected the laurel wreath, which represent the justice enforcement. After that, we started working on the color scheme, and actually we were working in depth, selecting the color and studying the psychology behind each color. And we ended up choosing 5 colors. Nude, which represent conventional thinking, caring, and genuine. White, which represent purity. Blue, which represent calmness and peace. Indigo, deep concentration, fairness, and integrity. And last, yellow gold, which represent mind, intellect, success, and achievement. The county communication designer, she helped to develop 3 options. Once the 3 options been developed, we formed our focus group. We were very careful actually selecting the people to join our focus group. We want to make sure that it's diversified, has a lot of people who can represent our internal and external stakeholders, meaning our county employee and our community partners. Our focus group consists of Edith Cruz Sanchez from the Sheriff Department, Brian Berry from Probation Department, Terrell Simons from Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Division, Vanessa Green from the Office of Equity and Racial Justice, and Elizabeth Bostos from the Health and Human Services Agency, and of course, our community partners. We send the three options via survey to our stakeholders, internal and external, and received the feedback. The focus group picked the top two options, which we are sharing with the board today. At the end, actually, before I wrap up my little presentation, I want to take the opportunity actually to thank the County Communication Office team, Tammy, Glenn, Sarah Sweeney, Tracy DeFore, and of course, our designer, Raquel Mendoza, who was heavily involved in this process. And of course, I want to thank our focus group, our community members, and my team for their input and support. And thank you so much. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you, Norris. Thank you very much for all the obvious work that you've done on this, and for actually, and when she was doing it, she was actually making connections. We, as you know, we don't have a very robust community outreach component due to staffing and whatnot, but Norris was able to do that in the process. So here we are presenting to you, Chair Delaney, the top two logos for the board's consideration and adoption. One of the things I failed to mention was, even in the very beginning of this with the branding, we'd actually looked at maybe even changing the name, right? Because Citizens itself, you know, it's not inclusive. We were looking at maybe Community Law Enforcement Review Board or something along those lines, but that may be a charter issue that we cannot really address at this moment because the charter says we're the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. So at this point, I just want you to know all of the work that went into this, everything that Norris did, and she needs to be commended. I mean, this was a major topic for her, a major project. So I thank you, Norris, for everything you've done. And with that, Chair Delaney, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Norris. Looks like you did a lot of hard work, and I appreciate all of that. I guess is your plan, would you like us to adopt one this evening? Is that what you're looking for?
That is what we're
Okay.
looking for, Chair Delaney.
Well, I'll go ahead and start the discussion. I like Lady Justice. And I will just open it up. Community, let's start with community. Do we have any public input?
I see none.
Okay. Chair members, CLERB members.
Oh, I apologize. I do see one.
Okay.
now.
All right. Sounds good.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Yusef Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition. And I definitely am thankful that you're removing the badge from the logo. I mean, from the logo. It has been a long idea of the community that this is mostly a cop shop and we'll get no justice there. I think it's more appropriate to have a different logo. I didn't get a chance to see the logo. The video on my camera is not working. I didn't get a chance to see the video, but I mean the logo, but to switch it from a badge is very, very important for the community to feel that there's not a bias towards law enforcement when they make a complaint. Thank you.
And thank you. I do not see any other requests to speak from the public.
So, Ms. Kank?
I like the B logo because it shows people, and that is who we represent. It also shows Lady Justice, but it shows people. So that would be my vote.
Thank you, Bonnie. Ms. Kinayu?
I really like B initially. My only problem is the little state. It looks like a state on the side and it looks like Oregon. It doesn't look like California. So it's almost like, to me, it's like we were going to be, are you in Oregon? Are you in Washington? So I'm going to go with A. Oh, I really, really, really like B, but I'm going to go with A only because I don't live in Oregon.
Okay. Is that a motion? Would you like to make a motion or would you, oh, Pastor Spriggs.
Yes, is there any way that, I really like B, but is there any way that you could change that so it looks like California and not some other place?
Well, the whole point was to somehow capture San Diego County in the logo. So So that's what that was, as opposed to logo A, which had, and I'm sorry, Norris. I'm sorry. I probably should turn it over to you. Okay. So the county of San Diego is written out in logo A, but it's not in logo B, but we wanted to put the shape on there. And we had these conversations too. It's like, are we in Oregon or Montana or whatever's going on there? But it does, that's San Diego County, right? So that's what it is. And at this point, any other questions, Norris will answer.
Thank you.
Okay, so question for her. Is there any way that you could put like the San Diego Padres SD over that so that it looks like it's San Diego? Just an idea, just.
Well, I think we can't because it's like we are promoting for other entity. So I don't think so. The county communication office will accept that.
And it might be a
However, I can
trademark, it might be a
confirm if you would
trademark
like.
problem on top of it. There could be a trademark issue there too. So
Paul, you are muted.
can you hear
Oh,
me
no,
now?
I heard him.
No, it's a trademark issue, I'm sure. So, yeah.
Any other? Ms. Kanker, are you, is your hand up again or?
It is up again. And so to that map, if you could just put off to the side, San Diego County. Doesn't have to be the Padres logo. If you could just put San Diego County somewhere in that little square, that would clear up everything, I think, in my opinion.
Anyone else? I have to say, you know, they're really, really nice. My reason for wanting or liking Lady Liberty is that we are here for justice, for fair and impartial justice. The other one is a crowd of people, and I understand the reasoning behind it, but I don't know that other people would understand that without an explanation. I think Lady Liberty's pretty it's pretty understandable just looking at it. My thoughts. Anyway, do we have somebody that wants to try a motion?
I do.
Okay.
We accept the logo B.
Is there a second? Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Got it, Pastor Spriggs. All right, Pastor Spriggs, roll call.
Okay. Eileen Delaney.
Regrettably, no.
Okay. Mary Ann Pintar.
They're both great, but I'm going to say no and support Lady Justice.
Okay. Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr. Yes. Andrew Hayes.
No.
Okay. Nadia Keen Ayub.
No.
Okay. Bonnie Kink.
Yes.
Ariana Federico Mondragon.
No.
Okay. And G.I. Wilson.
No.
Okay.
Motion does not carry. Do we have a motion, another motion?
I'll move that we adopt logo A.
Okay. Or is there a second? That's G.I. Wilson. Okay. Pastor Spriggs?
Eileen Delaney.
Yes.
Mary Ann Pintar.
Yes.
Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr. No. Andrew Hayes.
No.
Nadia Keen Ayub.
Yes.
Bonnie Kink.
No.
Okay. Ariana Federico Mondragon.
Yes.
And G.I. Wilson.
Yes.
Okay.
How many was that? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
It was 5.
5 to.
Five yeses, at least that's my math, I'm sorry, but it
Yeah.
was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And then 1,
1, 2,
3. 3 no's.
I only have 5.
Well, Andrew was no,
Yeah, I can tell you, so
Pastor Spriggs was no, and Bonnie was no.
that's correct.
So 5-3.
That's correct.
Does that pass?
No. You need 6.
Okay, so it's not the majority of the quorum, it's the actual,
No, the quorum is the number of people
Yeah.
on the board,
okay. Does that mean we stay with what we have?
unless you folks want to make another motion or something different, or I'm not different, but if there's something else you want to propose. Otherwise, I would think it looks like it's back to the drawing board, because this is not something that we're going to go away from.
Ms. Pintar?
Are we able to bring this item back at a future meeting?
Yes, we are.
Okay, I would move that we do so, please.
Say that again, I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
I would move or ask that we bring it back to a future meeting.
Okay. Any particular meeting? 30
next-
days, 60 days?
The next meeting, please.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion to continue continue it, I guess, for 30 days. GI?
I second it.
All right. Any other discussion? Okay, Pastor Spriggs?
Eileen Delaney,
Yes.
Marianne Pintar,
Yes.
Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr., yes. Andrew Hayes,
Yes.
Nadia Keene Ayub,
Yes.
Bonnie King,
Bonnie, you were muted.
Thought I unmuted myself. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ariana Frederico Mondragon
Yes.
and Mr. G.I. Wilson.
Yes.
Okay. We will discuss this next month. Mr. Parker, if you could make sure that that's on the agenda, that'd be terrific. All right, next one is our 1-year update to recommendations, California State Auditor Report. Mr. Parker?
As we all know, last February 3rd, in addition to the Sheriff's Department being audited, we were part of that audit as well. And there were 6 recommendations that were made by the state auditors in reference to CLERB. And we have given report backs, I think it was 30 days, 60 days, 180 days, and now 1 year. And this, I think, is our last report back. This was, so basically, I'd just like to go through the 6 recommendations and our response, which you have been provided with, just so everyone knows what we did and what we said. So the first recommendation, very important, was to discuss and modify CLERB's current agreement with the Sheriff's Department and the labor organization, the Deputy Sheriff's Association, to allow CLERB's investigators to conduct independent interviews of Sheriff's Department sworn staff. Over the last year, I've been in conversations with the Deputy Sheriff's Association, council, and we had come up with a pretty good an understanding. We're simply waiting for that to be codified. There's been a change at the Deputy Sheriff's Association leadership, so I don't know how that's going to be impacted. And with the change in sheriff, with the new sheriff, I don't know how that's going to impact this as well, because both the DSA, it's my understanding, and also the Sheriff's Department are discussing the feasibility of CLERB's compelling of statements during these interviews. We contend, of course, that the administrative code indicates that we shall receive complete and prompt cooperation from all officers and employees of the county. But at this point, that is our response. That is where we are. So really, it's kind of, we're in a little bit of a holding pattern until we can get something formalized. So that's recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 2, we have, it's about a comprehensive training manual to discuss, also to include death investigations. We have a training manual that basically covers all the topics listed in the attachment. We do need to continue to work on a day-to-day type or a week-to-week or a phase type of training program, which is in process. And we will update that updated training manual will be released and submitted to the state on March 1st, 2023. Recommendation number 3 was to create policies and procedures that require investigators to finish casework on in-custody death investigations within 3 months of receiving the homicide investigation file. That policy was implemented the day of the audit, and that is our current practice as we speak. Recommendation number 4 was that we should revise rules and regulations to include prioritization criteria for investigating in custody deaths above all other. And recommendation 5 was also to revise the rules and regulations to include clarification that our investigations of in custody deaths include those classified as natural. And you'll see on our rules and regulation proposed revision again this evening that that's part of the proposed revisions. That's what kind of started this almost a year ago, were those 2 recommendations. And then finally, recommendation number 6 was that CLERB should perform an analysis of overall trends related to these deaths, including demographic information, and determine whether the trends suggest deficiency in the Sheriff's Department policy and procedures, and that we should include those trends and analysis in annual reports starting with the 2021 report. We did just that. We also did very similar in the 2022 semi-annual report. And so right now in the 2022 annual report, which will be, like I said, we'll discuss next month, we're going to do the same thing. So obviously we've complied with that recommendation as well. That was our response to the state audit of CLERB. Chair Delaney.
Sorry. Do we have any members of the public that have comments?
I see none.
Okay.
Oh, I apologize. I apologize. Saxon's older sister.
Okay.
Sabrina, are you there?
I am here. Hi, it's Sabrina Weddle, Saxon Rodriguez's older sister. I'm just here to speak and, say I'm still here fighting. I actually did hear from a liaison. Turns out it was a lieutenant. It was one of the lieutenants that showed up to my mother's front door. He never mentioned he was a liaison. I would like change when it comes to the liaisons and their representation when it comes to giving family members of people who have died in custody the proper information. Not once did Lieutenant Hernandez state that he was a liaison for me, my mom, Saxon. We just want transparency. We're going to continue to show up to these meetings until there's the proper answers, the proper change. Again, I'm here for Saxon Rodriguez and all of the families who have passed. It's Gilbert Gill's 1-year anniversary today. He died in Vista Jail. We just want transparency. We just want change. We don't want to continue to have more members showing up to these meetings. It's now almost 7 o'clock. Again, my name is Sabrina Weddle and I'm here for Saxon Rodriguez. Thank you.
Thank you, Sabrina. Next, we will go to Ms. Crawford. Ms. Crawford.
I'm sorry to be speaking again, but I want to reiterate what Saxon's saying. It's not knowing and not having any feedback. I had a liaison or lieutenant and a detective, and they're both nice, very nice fellows, but they're not giving you anything. And they refuse to give any information or any autopsy or any. It's just like, it's almost insulting. And is there some kind of way that we can put a monthly limit on how long they can pretend that they're still investigating? Everything with my son was in a contained enclosure. There's no reason for it to take that long to investigate a death that happened on their own property when they should have been watching. We need to know more. It's like a wall of silence. Don't give me a liaison who's not going to say anything to me. It's insulting. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Chair Delaney, I see no other requests to speak.
Okay, thank you. CLERB members, CLERB board, do we have any comments? Do we have a motion to approve the recommendations? Do we want to continue until next month to give you more time to review them?
Chair Delaney, may I? Chair Delaney, may I?
Yes.
Say something? So as was the case before with every other response I've done to the state, and this is on me, and you folks will tell me what to do in the future. I responded because that's one of the things that was delegated to me, was to respond to these audit updates by your board. So that's why I did that. This item is simply here for you folks to know what the response was. But if you'd like something different in the future, then I will bring these back 2 months before or a month before I respond on your behalf.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. Ms. Pintar?
I guess I was confused. So I think that what I thought was that Paul was reporting to us what the response was. I don't think that's why I was confused about a motion, because I didn't know if we were supposed to be making a motion to accept the report or if it was just informational. That's my question.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think for communication's sake, maybe next time, let us know so that we can at least know in case somebody asks us and we can answer intelligently. So, okay, great. Thank you. All right, D, receive public input on updated proposed revisions to CLERB's rules and regulations. I will turn this back over to Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Chair Delaney. I know we have at least one request to speak in reference to the topics that will be discussed here. I believe, actually, we may not. That might be under the authority part, but that will come up here with the rules and regulation revision. So to be clear, on January 31st, we had a special meeting. The purpose of the special meeting was to present to you folks and to the members of the public proposed revisions to the rules and regulations. We received public input on that date. And at this time, I wrote these. So this is what I thought that we would do moving forward, but obviously you are the clerk. And so this is your opportunity. Now I'm presenting it to you folks. This is your opportunity after we receive the public input, put the final touches on proposed revisions that will move forward in the process. This is your opportunity to tell me what you want us to do moving forward. And so that's why one of the things I did do was bring forward to you folks earlier today a rationale for each item to be clear. But also to be clear, I made a rationale for each item at the January 31st meeting. I did it verbally, but this is now in writing. So everyone, there could be no confusion or mistake. So with that, Chair Delaney, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate all the hours and hard work that you put into this. So we did get the document with the revisions on Thursday. It was disseminated. And my goal is to ensure that all interested parties, as well as CLERB members, have time to carefully read it. Do we have any members of the public that want to say anything before CLERB members discuss this further? Mr. Parker, I can't see them, so if you could help me, that'd be great.
I don't
Nothing?
see it.
Okay, thank you. All right, CLERB. Any comments, concerns?
Sure. So I want to thank the staff and for all their work on this. It is detailed, so I would hope that tonight we won't take any action. And as a matter of fact, I do personally have some challenges with some of the revisions just on a one-by-one basis. And so I'd really like to figure out how we put, when I see this document, I see it as we're setting goals and laudable goals, but we also have to have goal setting, how we get to those goals and put a plan together to make that happen and make sure that we have the deep discussion that we need to on all these serious topics. So, I hope, that we can continue to have discussion on this and maybe put together, a plan of how we approve this moving forward. So that's kind of my thought. And then have that input so that we can go into the detail that I think is just for this document. So anyway, that's kind of my comment.
Well, thanks, Andrew. Anyone else? Ms. Pintar?
I want to thank Paul and all the staff for all of their hard work. I really appreciate it. There was a lot of thought put into this. And I think it was largely based on many of our prior conversations. And I know the document that Mr. Parker circulated earlier today provided additional rationale for some of these changes. I think that I would just like to say there's a lot of really good good objectives set forth here, but I am not certain about the inclusion of all department employees as part of our purview. I feel very strongly that we need oversight over medical service providers, and we need to be able to investigate anytime a person has been there's been grave bodily injury or a death, regardless of who the employee is. I would just like to see us prioritize jurisdiction over the medical service providers, I think, before we try to ask for jurisdiction over all of the employees. I just think that that is the priority that we have stated previously, and I would like to see us really focus on getting that piece done, and talk a little bit more about how we can. I know that that's part of meet and confer, and that Paul's been speaking with the appropriate stakeholders and employee representatives. So that is my first comment, and I'll let others take the floor now.
Okay. Mr. Wilson?
I would like to have all employees thing detailed, exactly what it's talking about. Does it include contractors? Because medical personnel could be considered contractors. Remember the go around we've had about the video cameras in the jails. Part of it's handled by somebody who's on the staff, part of it's handled by a contractor. So I would really like to have that detailed out. So we say all sheriff employees, what exactly are we talking about? And where would the medical folks fall under? Would they fall under all the staff, or would they fall under contract? Because I understand the medical staff is contract.
Thank you, GR. Mr. Hayes, you had your hand up again? You're muted.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yes, I do want to kind of cite my greatest challenges with this, because I said my challenges, but I do want to put it out there. My greatest challenges is the expansion of the jurisdiction of the board to all department staff. I have great challenges with that, and so I really think that we need to flesh out some of those details. And I do understand that meet and confer occurs here, but that's some of my biggest concerns.
Thank you. Ms. Pinchari, is your hand up again?
It is. I just I have a lot of comments on a lot of the different items and questions. I don't know if this is something we want to try and go through here tonight. I'm happy to do that if that's the best way to do it. I do, but to GI's comment, I think that my recollection is that a lot of the medical staff are contractors. So to the extent that we are seeking oversight over medical staff, I think it's going to have to include contractors if we can. I don't know how we have oversight over medical without oversight over medical staff contractors. The only other way I could see getting at that would be, are there sheriff's department employees that oversee the contractors? Paul, this is a lot of questions. So I don't know how we want to eat this elephant.
Before I go to Paul, Mr. Hayes, do you have your hands up again?
I'm sorry. So that's kind of the point of my initial comment was, there is a lot here. And so, I think that we do these kinds of policies justice by having these discussions and putting a plan together or a priority list together of these, and then having those discussions, not necessarily one by one. So from my experience as a school board member, we sometimes do what's called board study sessions, right? Where we talk about specific things and specific issues, and we only talk about that so that we can have that topic and give it justice so that we know that we did focus our time. And so I think, perhaps if the board were to set a timetable for ourselves to say, hey, this is when we would like to see these discussions occur and how that would look like, that might be a way. I'm just throwing out an idea, something to consider.
Okay. Are you, for example, let's say we said we want everyone to review what we got today, because I didn't have a chance to look at it. It was too soon to the meeting and I was doing other things, but it's important. It's for me I wanted to look at it. So if we said 2 weeks and then after that have a meeting just to go over it, is that what you're suggesting?
That's certainly one option or permutation that I would consider. Or perhaps we say these are the most pressing items that the board sees as the most important. I certainly have some other questions on the impacts on, maybe responsibility of the county that some of these things might have. So I don't know. I'd like to delve into it a little more. I don't necessarily would say one by one, but perhaps bundling and what that looks like. I don't know at this point, but certainly, a 2-week mark for us to look and say, here's what we'd like to consider. Could be a good option. I open to other thoughts though from folks.
Ms. Pintar, and then we'll go to Mr. Parker.
So I don't know that we need to go through them one by one, but I made notes on here and I probably have, 12 comments, which I'm prepared to go through one by one tonight, but I don't know if that's productive tonight or not. The thing I would say though, is that I do think it's important for transparency for us to have this discussion in a public setting. I have not
absolutely
previously felt like this is something we should do behind the scenes, or I think at one point I suggested, well, maybe I could collect the information and send it to Paul. I just, the more I think about it, we should all state for the record why we support something, why we don't, why we want changes made, or why we don't. So I would, if we aren't going to do that tonight, I would like for us to do it at a future meeting where everyone comes prepared to say what they support and what they don't support. I cannot support it being done behind the scenes is my point.
I don't think we can legally anyway. So, yeah. Mr. Parker?
I agree with that.
Oh, at this point, I have nothing. If we're going to have another meeting to discuss this, that would be great. I'll hold my comments and until then, if there's going to be another meeting to discuss this.
Okay. Ms. Pintar, Bonnie? Ms. King?
Are we ready for a motion?
If you want to make a motion, sure.
There are 3 requests to speak.
Hold on.
Okay.
Sorry, what was that, Mr. Parker? Couldn't hear you.
There are 3 requests to speak.
Oh, okay.
Before any motion is made.
Sure, go for it.
Is that okay, Ms. Kink? Crystal Irving, are you there?
Hi, I'm here. Before I begin, just to clarify, is this still item 8C or are we to unfinished business 9B? Because my comment was for 9B, but it sounds like we're talking about it now.
We're 8D.
We're 8D, but Ms. Irving, I think your comment would be appropriate here because it's part of the rules and regulation revision that we're proposing.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Then I'll start now. Good evening, everyone. My name is Crystal Irving, and I'm president of SEIU Local 221, the labor union that represents medical and support staff employees at the San Diego County jails. I came before you in October of 2021 with the issues of expanding CLERB's purview over medical staff when that was first brought forward. As mentioned back then, SEIU has a long-standing public record of advocacy for improving the workplace health and safety of our healthcare service professionals, the humane treatment of detainees, and an improved healthcare delivery system in our county jails. And we pushed for the approval of an audit before the California State Legislature's Joint Legislative Audit Committee. And we fought successfully to stop Sheriff Gore's efforts to limit accountability by contracting out healthcare services. Our advocacy to address the dangerous impacts of short staffing for employees and those in their care have resulted in an increase of hundreds of positions, and finally, the end of mandatory overtime. But in spite of those important changes, we agree with this board that the current health and safety conditions of our workforce and detainees are insufficient and needs much needed change. My members and I certainly do not want any more families to continue to experience the loss of their loved ones while in custody. So again, we need change. With that in mind, I'm going to resubmit a copy of the letter that we sent earlier, nearly a year and a half ago, and reiterate the concerns that I shared then because they have not been addressed. The proposed changes are heavy on increasing the power to investigate an overworked, exhausted, strained workforce, and is insufficient on looking at the systemic problems in the environment they report to work in every day. So before moving forward with any change, I asked Mr. Parker to meet with SEIU members that work in the jails, especially our medical staff, so that they can share their perspective on the challenges of their day-to-day work and the changes that are needed to address those issues. We are an impacted group and have not been afforded an opportunity to provide input or feedback. I believe many of the solutions can be found within, and our members have a unique insight to the issues and challenges faced in the jail. I am also resubmitting the letter that we sent to this board with the 5 following recommendations to investigate whether medical staff was directed by law enforcement, by a licensed medical professional, or a combination of both, whether staffing ratios have been established based on best clinical practices, whether those staffing ratios were always adhered to during the care of the detainee, whether staff were subjected to mandatory overtime at the time of the incident, and whether there is a complaint process by which medical staff may raise concerns that is reviewed by licensed medical professionals. Again, I hope that Mr. Parker will accept our offer to meet with our workers as we continue to work through these challenges together. And I urge the board to review our recommendations and refine the approach. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Will you be sending, you'll be sending the letter to, oh, she's gone. Did she send the letter to you, Mr. Parker, or when she does, can you send it to the board?
Of course.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to John Settles. Mr. Settles.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Great.
can.
Fantastic. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Paul, thank you so much for your dedication to improving the CLERB. And thanks everyone who's working on all this. As a citizen of San Diego County and someone who's lost a loved one in the care of the Sheriff's Department, I would like to put forth that I find it a little concerning that that members of this board wouldn't want to hold every single person who had some kind of responsibility in caring for someone who potentially has died in custody responsible. Yeah, I will be interested to hear that conversation. So thank you, the council woman who said, sorry, I forget your name, but who said that we should do this in public. I would love to hear the reasoning behind not holding or not having purview over as much as possible. Like I say, as a citizen who and someone who's lost someone in custody, I also would like you to put forth, or at least think that the timeliness of the CLERB's ability to conduct their investigation. In fact, I really have a problem as someone like who sees the CLERB as the citizens' arm of holding law enforcement accountable. I don't understand why there's such a discrepancy in the time in which the CLERB is able to conduct their investigation and put the information forward. I feel the public's being kept in the dark, and that the law enforcement side of this is able to get all their ducks in a row, make sure all the reports say what they need them to say, so that then in the end they can support it, when those reports should be immediately released, because those reports are filed, and if they're filed, they shouldn't be updated or anything, just to get the story straight. So anyway, I guess that's really what I had to say. Like I say, I appreciate all your hard work, and I hope we can get this to the point where we as citizens feel like law enforcement is actually being reviewed, and that we actually are able to get that information quickly. So I guess that's what I had to say, and I appreciate it. I want to give a shout out to Gilbert Gill, who lost his life 1 year ago today. Honestly, due to problems with the Sheriff's Department's caring for people in their custody. So thanks for the opportunity to speak. Thank you for all your hard work, and that's what I have to say, I guess. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Settles.
Thank you.
Next, looks as if there's one more, Chair Delaney. Sabrina, are you there?
Hi, I'm here. So I just wanted to state that I was hearing Andrew Hayes comment about, I want to say he was trying to compare it to a school, but when somebody dies at a school, somebody is held accountable at that school. Whoever was caring for that kid, they're held accountable. And a lot of these deaths, we're not seeing anybody held accountable. I also heard, we're talking about scanning the staff and the deputies. I know that the medical staff is contractors, and I heard them state that the San Diego sheriffs would be overseeing that, but we also need to take into accountability that 2 San Diego sheriff's deputies were arrested this year for having drugs on their possession while at work. So we need to take that in. I mean, and then 2 deputies following for, in public intoxication. Like, we have to see who's overseeing, because clearly the San Diego sheriffs aren't doing their job. It's been shown time and time again that they're not doing what they need to do to keep humans safe and alive. And we cannot compare anything to a school or a school board. Again, I'm not 100% sure what he was comparing it to, but my mom works as a teacher. And if someone dies in her custody, she's going to jail. If she brings drugs onto campus, jail, not paid time off, it's jail. And we need to take that into accountability when being in charge of these jails. These are humans, whether they're in there for crimes or not. The San Diego sheriffs are right there with them at this point. 2023, they're showing that they're criminals too, and that they need to be held accountable. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do not see any additional requests to speak, Chair Delaney.
Okay. Ms. Kank, you had your hand up, and then we'll go to Mr. Hayes.
I defer to Mr. Hayes.
Okay.
Council, I don't know if this is appropriate. Can I address the question that was asked?
Okay, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, just for the edification of the members of the public who had question, my comment was specifically related to the process by which we will discuss these changes. When you discuss changes at some levels of government, you have study sessions to talk about the changes. That was my comment. So I just want to be clear about that. I wasn't referencing something else. I was referencing the fact that to have a process on important discussions like this, you really need to have them out in the open and really hone in and focus on the detail and the importance of the topics. So that's just my comment.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Ms. Kank?
So I'm ready to make a motion, so I defer to Ms. Pintar.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Bonnie. This will be my last question. It's for Mr. Parker. The very important issues raised by Ms. Irving. I recall back in 2021 when she spoke before us, when we first began talking about seeking, well, at least since I've been here, we first began speaking about oversight for medical. And I just want to clarify for the board and for the public when the concerns that she raised and in that letter that they sent to us back in 2021, when that happens. So she's saying, she's asking you to meet with them and make sure that those concerns are taken into consideration. Does that happen before we adopt the rules, proposed rule changes, or after, when you go to meet and confer? Could you just explain the timing of that? So I just want to make sure that we are addressing the concerns that she raised.
As far as the timing, I don't know the timing yet. Obviously, tonight's movement or apparent movement on the CLERB's part is going to push this back. That's fine. But in reference to talking to the unions, that's what meet and confers. My understanding, that's what meet and confers is for. But I want to make it clear to especially to the board members who were not here 2 years ago, this has been my #1 priority since I've been back. The medical service coverage. And I know there were questions about, well, how did you go from medical service coverage to everybody? And that I detailed verbally on January 31st, and I've been putting into our minutes and onto our agenda on December 13th and January 10th that we were looking at this. So this should not be a surprise. But what it stemmed from was comments that were made during October 25th debate. So that's where all the employees had come from. And it just seemed to be like, well, if that was what was said publicly, or that was my interpretation of what was said publicly by the now sheriff, that it seemed to be like that would be the appropriate thing to do. However, we can move forward. I'm sure that this CLERB board will move forward and really dive into that. So in reference to SEIU, yeah, meet and confer. That's the number one priority, hands down, for the medical personnel. And in reference to contractors, that's something we've talked about as well. That's also in there, but that's a different piece of it. But that's not something, right now it's about medical, and then contractors will eventually, that's part of the process. But let's see what happens through all of this process, and we'll see at the end of the day what it is, if that answers the question, Vice Chair Pintar.
Thank you.
Very much.
I have one thing, Ms. Kank, if I could say something before you make your motion. You good with that? I would be very interested in meeting and conferring with union as well, if appropriate. I am very interested to hear what they have to say. If they could offer suggestions to us. They're in the, I don't want to say in the trenches, but they're there. They're the ones that are doing this. And we've talked for a long time about oversight on medical, the importance of it, of being able to understand some of the missing pieces in our cases. So I'm just putting that out there, Mr. Parker. If that's something that you're arranging, I would love to attend as well. And with that, I will go back to Ms. Kank.
I'm going to defer to GI.
Bonnie wants the last word.
Yeah, I think we really need to detail what we mean by all, because the sheriff department has volunteers. If you say all, it's going to include the volunteers. So, I think we need to carefully look at that and see what all means and define it. There are volunteers that work at a lot of the stations. There are volunteers that go out in the community. So that's just another aspect.
And to Ms. Pintar's point, I think prioritizing the medical in the detention centers, I think that's where our focus should be right now. That's very important to me. Okay, now, does anybody else want to say anything on the board before Bonnie has the last word? Go for it, Bonnie.
Thank you. So I think that we need to take little tiny baby steps. So medical personnel and whoever the medical personnel are, we need to define that. But my motion is that we have a special meeting just to discuss this, nothing else on the agenda, but this proposal.
Okay. Do you have it? Well, we'll get to that. Is there a second?
Second for the purpose of, yep, go ahead.
Oh. Hang on. Let me get the second and then we can discuss it. If I'm correct doing this correctly. Pastor Spriggs, are you making a motion? Okay. We have a second. All right. Go ahead, Mr. Hayes.
I was just going to ask Claire, kind of just in discussion, I guess this is just a discussion point, is how would we want that meeting to look? Because I think that we've heard from members of the public how important many of these things are. I think many of the board members have expressed, that they want to share individual, details, and as we should share individual reasons on different issues why we would support or wouldn't support. But again, it gets to me, a special meeting just on this entire document gets to the point of saying, well, are we going to approve the whole thing? Are we going to pull pieces out? So anyway, that's kind of, is there a question to the motioner or just a question to folks in general?
Would it be, council, I need your advice on this. Would it be appropriate if I asked Mr. Hayes and Ms. Kank to work with Paul to put together the meeting, how it will be, what we will do, and Is that an appropriate, is that appropriate?
Yes.
Okay. Would you two be willing to get with Mr. Parker? and
I would.
I'd
Mr.
be
Hayes?
happy to.
Okay, so if maybe, could you amend your motion and would you amend the second as well to add that in there? Was that a yes, Ms. Kink?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so can you repeat your motion then, just so that we're all on the same page? You want a special meeting and you and Mr. Hayes will meet with Mr. Parker to arrange the protocol of the meeting.
And my dog is screaming, so
Can't hear it.
Problem. I propose that Mr. Hayes, Mr. Parker, and I get together to discuss the minute details of the proposal.
Well, or of having how the meeting will be run, not the proposal.
Okay.
This is more of the protocol of the meeting
and that would be, okay, so I propose that Mr. Hayes, Mr. Parker, and I get together and propose and discuss how the meeting would be run, the special meeting.
Okay.
This proposal.
At which point then we will, are you good? Is that a second, Pastor Spriggs? Okay. Again, let's keep in mind that once you do that, we'll have to set the meeting. And second of all, let's see if we can hear from the union as well, so we can add that to the discussion.
The union should be involved in that meeting.
I'm not sure that would be appropriate.
No, not appropriate. Okay.
I'm going to leave that. That should be a separate meeting. And maybe if Paul and I go, or Paul goes, he can report. But I don't think having the union there is appropriate.
No, I'm sorry, Chair Delaney, I got to jump in because I'm very confused.
Okay.
What are you telling me to do? What is the issue right now? I mean, we're going to have a meeting to talk about how to have the meeting. I'm just confused as to what we're doing here, because as far as labor relations go, I don't believe that the chair can attend those discussions. We're going to follow up on that.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
Number two, if Ms. Kink and Mr. Hayes and myself get together to talk about the protocol for the meeting, is that then going to be recounted? Then we'll have an item on the March 21st agenda to then schedule the subsequent meeting?
No, you'll come back and then we'll schedule a meeting, a special meeting. If I'm understanding it correctly.
I will come back on March 21st and tell you, please give me some guidance here.
I know. I'm trying to get all this.
May I try? May I try?
I'm sorry. Who was that?
Marianne.
Oh, Marianne.
I believe what we have decided is that Ms. Kank and Mr. Hayes and Mr. Parker will convene following tonight and determine how we will go about discussing the changes the entire board wants to see made to the rules, to the proposed rules changes.
At a special meeting.
Together, then we will agendize that for what I presume will be the next meeting. And that when you send us the agenda will explain how we are going to go about discussing these proposed rules and regulations. So I don't think that we're having another meeting.
Yes, we are.
That's how we're going to have the meeting.
No, but Miss Kank's motion was to have a special meeting.
Yes, but not to discuss how to have the meeting.
No. That's between the three of them.
That's right. That's what I was trying to state.
Right.
And hopefully I made it clear, but maybe I made it as clear as
You did. No, I get it. You did.
Should be like an ad hoc committee between the three of us.
Well,
we will bring back.
It's not really ad hoc. You're just going to say it's like a community. What did we have the meeting before where here's what we're going to do at the meeting. So,
okay.
Mr. Wilson?
Oh, no, Miss Pintar cleared it up for me. I was totally, I got it now. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm Irish, but I got it now.
Do we have any other questions before we have roll call vote? For a special meeting, we're voting on a special meeting, and that Bonnie and Andrew and Mr. Parker get together to determine how we will conduct that meeting. For the purpose of the, okay. All right. Pastor Spriggs?
All right. Eileen Delaney,
Yes.
Marianne Pintar,
Yes.
Pastor Robert Spriggs Jr. says yes. Andrew Hayes,
Yes.
Nadia Keene Ayub,
Yes.
Bonnie Kink,
Yes.
Ariana Federico Mondragon,
Yes.
and G.I. Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Next is unfinished business and 9A, and I will turn that back over to Mr. Parker.
About a year and a half ago, this board allowed me or gave me the authority to work with county staff to pursue legislation in reference to supporting increased transparency and civilian oversight of peace officers and custodial officers. There was a bill that was put forth last year that died somehow in the process, but this was part of the county's legislative program last year. Based on your continued support of transparency and civilian oversight, that issue is now on the county's legislative program for this year. If I hear anything from this point forward, any bills or whatnot, I'll let you know.
Great, thank you. And go ahead and number B as well, or letter B, I should say.
I think in reference to letter B, I think we've already discussed that.
Okay.
How it says all personnel, but that we just gave the update on where that came from and how we've been pushing it and why. But we'll talk about that at the special meeting, I'm sure.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, number 10, board member comments. Do we have any additional comments? Ms. Pintar?
I would just like to first of all express, again, as I've done in the past, condolences to the families that are present tonight for the loss of their loved one. We hear you, and I just wanted to let you know that we do. I also want to say that I believe that I have been respectful and reasonable in the questions that I have asked both of my colleagues and the Sheriff's Department. I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to continue to ask questions and hope to get answers that provide clarity so we can make good decisions. I would ask that I get the same respect in those answers in return. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pintar. Ms. Keene Ayub?
I'd like to ask Sergeant Tinley, or actually Lieutenant Greenewald, if they could come back to our next meeting with the information. I believe there are 9 different agencies in San Diego, which means that if the San Diego Sheriff's Department is responsible for 25% of that intake, they're responsible for the bulk. Plus, I'd like to know why the request that we've put in repeatedly is now being told to us that it was submitted under the incorrect part of the policy. I'm looking at the policy now. I'm also looking at the R13 transgender intersex and non-binary inmates policy 403 OPC. So I'm trying to figure out why we submitted a policy and it doesn't pertain to intake. So if that could be responded to next time per Lieutenant Greenwald's comments, I would appreciate it. That way I can just clarify in my head.
Thank you. Mr. Parker?
Chair Delaney, just in reference to Ms. Keene Ayub's comments, I want to make sure that I understood that as well. Just to be clear, from our perspective, we made the policy recommendation for the field operations manual because that's where it said shall or should, right? But also, if you see in the recommendation, it said and any other associated policies. We did make that as well, just in case we were missing something. And we did reference the R13. So just to be clear from us, because my initial thought was that I missed the mark here, right? Like maybe I made a recommendation that was not, that we missed something here. I don't believe that we did, and we did put and any other associated policies. So I'll just leave it at that. But again, the lieutenant is more than welcome, or Sergeant Tingley to respond to that aspect. But does that help you understand what CLERB did? Just in case there was any confusion. I don't know if there was. I just want to make sure I'm clear.
Are you
Okay,
referring
okay.
to Sergeant?
No, Ms. Keno, you just answered my question.
Oh,
but-
okay, okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other board comments before we go to Sheriff and Probation Liaison query, which we've kind of sort of done, but. So we will go to that. Are there any other questions? Ms. Pintar, did you have another question that you wanted to? Okay. Sergeant Tingley, is there anything you wanted to say?
I'd like to just give you an update. But as far as the questions, if we could, when asking the questions to the Sheriff's Department to answer, if we can be specific on the question that we want answered, that'd be extremely helpful. I know Paul is currently working on getting those questions to me so that we can answer those as they come in. With that said, we did have a question last meeting that Ms. Pintar asked, and the question was given to me in the form of, if a family files a lawsuit, will CLERB reports be available during the discovery? That was sent to me to answer, and the answer is going to be, the CLERB is a comprised of department leadership and the sheriff's legal advisor and performs a critical review of each incident. The focus of the CLERB is to assess the department's civil exposure because of a given incident. So as this case with any board that consults with its legal counsel, the discussions may be subjected to the attorney-client privilege, attorney work product doctrine. The deliberative process privilege and other privileges, requests for discovery of any CLERB reports are determined by the court on a case-by-case basis. So that's going to be the response for that question. I hope that answers your question from last month. As far as the second question, I think we need to be a little bit, maybe need to clarify that a little bit with Paul. I was unable to answer that question. I'm not sure what Nadia was referring to when it relates to what was the last score. I'm not real sure what that is. So I'll tie in with Paul to see if we can clarify that one a little bit, and definitely try to get you that answered for the next meeting. As far as the sustained letters, there are 2 that are outstanding, as Mr. Parker stated. Those I am currently working on. I will have those done before the next meeting. Also working on the other policy recs, which are they're on the table right now and being reviewed. So as soon as those are done, I will definitely get that over to the CLERB board so that we can get those in the tracking system. I would like to encourage that all board members, have the ability to do a tour of our facilities so they have a full understanding of how the jail operations work. Assistant Sheriff Haidar Adams is willing to be with you during the tour. I think that's great. So that way, if there's any, questions that can't be answered by, anybody else, she can provide those answers. So far, we haven't had anybody that has reached out to me as it relates to doing a tour of the facility. But if there are people that are willing to do the tour, please let Paul Parker know so that way he could get a hold of me and I can get that scheduled, as that's already been approved. And we would love to see you all go through. CLERB investigators are doing ride-alongs so that they can get an idea of what officers and deputies are doing in the field, which will assist in their investigations. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant. Do we have anything from the probation department? Can you see anything, Paul?
No, I only see that Mr. Hayes and myself have.
Okay, and Mr. Hayes?
I was just going to say, sign me up for the tour and ride along. Sign
Let's
me
get
up.
let's get some dates on that. I'd like to go back. Sergeant, I have my application from the day that we went into lockdown for COVID was going to be my ride along day. Do you still have that information, or do you want me to resubmit?
So what I would request for all of the board members or the investigators that want to do a tour to provide updated information. That updated information has to be vetted through our personnel, through the assistant sheriff. And then once that's approved, which it's going to be, once that's approved, then we'll be able to schedule a date. I would like for all of you to do a tour of at least a couple facilities, maybe the Las Colinas Detention Facility as well as San Diego Central. So if you could get those to me, that'd be great because I'm ready to schedule you today. So if we can get that, that would be amazing. And if we could get that to Mr. Parker will give that to me and I'll reach back out to Mr. Parker and we'll get everybody set up.
Okay, just remember that we can only do 5 because we can't have a quorum. Mr. Hayes, did you have something else you wanted to say?
I was just going to say, whatever information, I don't know what information I need to give, so just tell me what I need to give. And
Your bank account number and credit card number?
Oh, I'm taxed a lot already.
I will get with Mr. Parker with the information that's needed and I will have him reach out to the board.
Thank you. Ms. Pintar?
I just wanted to make it clear that I have visited every single one of the facilities, detention facilities. And I encourage everybody to do it. It's very, very helpful as we're reviewing these cases to see where the deputies sit as they're observing the different housing modules and where the cameras are. I have not yet had an opportunity to tour the probation facility, so I'd like to ask that I'm able to do that next.
Thank you. You know, I saw, was it Brandon Berry or Brandon Ebriel that had their hand up?
That's what I was trying to chime in. I think it was Supervising Probation Officer Berry.
I'm sorry, my apologies. Did you want to say something?
Good evening. Just same as Sergeant Tingley, if you're interested in touring our probation facilities, definitely coordinate that with Paul and we'll be happy to get you in the facilities. Kind of depends on, the only thing that would hinder that is whether or not we're on quarantine protocols. So that's kind of a hit and miss for us at this point.
Thank you very much. We'll take you up on that, definitely.
Chair
Anything we can do to learn and educate and get those experiences, I think are really important. Mr. Parker, your hand is up.
Tasha Williamson has a public comment, and then after Ms. Williamson, I'd like to address one thing.
Okay, sure.
Ms. Williamson, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I want to say that I have toured all of the sheriff facilities, and I have also received complaints and concerns from several of those facilities most recently. I send emails regularly to the sheriff, at least I did when Sheriff Ray was the interim sheriff. I would hope that when you all go to visit the jails, that you also have the opportunities that we had when we visited the jails to talk to inmates there. It was very eye-opening for us when we visited the jails to be able to talk to not only personnel, but also inmates on the conditions and things that were happening at the jail, good and the needs that were needed to change there as well. And my other thing is that the same with probation facilities, if that opportunity is available to you, but also when you do ride-alongs with law enforcement, I hope that you will reach out to the nonprofit organizations in those communities so that you can also do ride-alongs with those community members so you can have a full perspective of how law enforcement impacts the communities and not just a perspective from law enforcement. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Parker.
In reference to the Critical Incident Review Board information that Sergeant Tingley had mentioned, I know the vote last month passed for the policy recommendation, but there were a couple of folks who had some questions about the attorney-client privilege, and Sergeant Tingley touched upon that. I have not yet sent, it was not an item on tonight's agenda, but there is, I'm in possession of at least a magistrate judge order, or I think it's an order, that this one specific judge indicates that that they're not attorney-client privilege, or that the county or that the sheriff's department failed to meet its burden to prove that it was attorney-client privilege. But I just wanted to make sure that that's only one judge. That's the order. I can forward to you folks so that you're aware of that, but that is what the dissenting votes wanted to know. And so that's, I figured I'd put it on the record.
Thank you, Paul. Anything else? All right, if we have nothing else, then no other public comments on council. Could you please read us into closed session, and we'll give it 10 minutes and then we'll be back. Or 5 minutes, sorry.
Pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, this board will adjourn to closed session to consider item 12 on tonight's agenda.
Thank you, everyone.